Hey, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. We're live now, so welcome to everyone who's joining us on Facebook or YouTube as well. And for those of us in the Zoom room, again, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We will get started here in just a second. Okay, to be mindful of everyone's time, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the introductions. Kelly, if you could keep an eye on the waiting room for me and let anyone who enters in, I would appreciate that. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Geneva Blackmer. I am the interim executive director for the Interfaith Center at Miami University. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that seeks to unify people through relationship building, dialogue, and social action. And I'm very happy to welcome Brian here with us today, who is currently working as the operations manager at the Mary Magdalen House in the OTR district of downtown Cincinnati. He previously received a joint master's degree in international humanitarian action from Universidad de Duesto, I'm probably saying that wrong, and the University of Bochum, with a specialization in access creation for vulnerable populations. Brian's work in Morocco helped to map the humanitarian efforts for sub-Saharan migrants headed for refuge in Spain. After working with the German Red Cross's International Cooperation Department as an advisor for security and risk management for the international projects supported in Berlin, Brian turned his efforts to helping the caminantes underway in Colombia fleeing the most recent Venezuelan elections. His spontaneous return to the United States was initiated by the upcoming project expansion to take place in Cincinnati. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Brian. And again, thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you to the Interfaith Center and the University of Miami and Oxford as well for hosting us. Thank you for the lovely introduction. It's good to see a couple names that I recognize and a couple new names as well. Um, so just to kind of give a general overview here, I'm just going to be basically using this PowerPoint for our guiding lecture. So we're going to do an introduction to WASH, WASH in urban context, specifically looking at the urban populations in Cincinnati and the effects there. And then the Mary Magdalene's house's contributions. And then I was going to go ahead and try and keep the PowerPoint slash lecture to about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll probably get out of here before 3. But I did want to go ahead and make myself available to do a question and answer and or a leading conversation, open-ended conversation at the end, because I think that's where I can really address a lot of the general public's interest and or the Interfaith Center's interest as well. So as you see here on the slide, we're going to go ahead and start with the introduction to WASH. WASH stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene, and is a comprehensive term encompassing the humanitarian efforts worldwide that aim to improve public health, that ensures access to clean water, adequate sanitation facilities, and promoting general hygiene practices. These efforts can be both preventative and curative in reducing the spread of diseases while enhancing community health and in fostering sustainable development. According to the World Health Organization, which will be mentioned here as the WHO, and also UNICEF, which is the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, projects that in 2022, roughly 43% of the world's global population lacked safely managed and safely maintained sanitation facilities, which adds up to about 3.5 billion people worldwide. 25% of those were without hand washing facilities at home, which is approximately 2 billion people, and 27% of the world's global population lacked direct access to safely managed drinking water, which is over 2.2 billion people. These drastic numbers directly reflect the scale of need for expansion of access to the most vulnerable and crisis populated populations and regions. So here we're going to look at what some of the WASH aims are. Again, the water and sanitation hygiene aims, specifically within the generic international humanitarian sector. Within the humanitarian sphere sector of WASH programs, WASH is considered to be a key part of life-saving interventions, both as an avenue for preparation, mitigation, and in recovery efforts. This importance is reflected in its listing in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which attempts to ensure, quote, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all, ranging from its prioritization and disaster relief in camps or and resettlements up to the building of resilience in school and health center infrastructure, the extensive efforts of the global community in the creation of building thousands of sewage systems and the construction of safe latrines are just prime examples of where WASH programs are implemented in international humanitarian projects and programs. The other WASH projects, these WASH projects also help to uphold many of the other development goals from the United Nations, such as the good health and well-being, zero hunger, and quality education. And these efforts materialize in four key strategic subcategories, which are predominantly disease prevention, protection and displacement settings, education and gender equality, and public health and dignity. And public health and dignity is what we are going to be looking at next. So when we're talking the public health and dignity, we're looking specifically at disease prevention and mitigation. Specifically, when looking at WASH, we're looking at waterborne diseases, clearly, as it's water and sanitation hygiene. So waterborne diseases often lead to the rapid spread of waterborne illnesses such as cholera, typhoid, dysentery, hepatitis A and E, and other diarrheal diseases. The inability to kind of contain or put a lid on these once they start spreading is really enhanced with unsafe drinking water, open defecation, and the lack of access to adequate hand washing facilities. And these conditions are especially dangerous to children under 5, with hundreds dying daily from preventable diarrheal diseases in different environments and ecosystems. Secondly, we're looking at the vector-borne diseases, vector-borne being diseases that are spread by insects, typically that breed in or near stagnant water, areas that have poor draining, and they are having issues of standing water. And these are the most famous culprits here are malaria, dengue, and Zika virus. So WASH services attempt to reduce public health risks by also ensuring safe disposal of human waste, the access to clean water, the provisioning of hygiene supplies like sanitizer, soap, and menstrual hygiene products. And poorly designed facilities can endanger users, especially women and children, and increase risk of violence and loss of personal and perceived dignity. So this is when we're looking at the physical safety and protection and displacement settings. When talking about protection and displacement settings, we're typically talking about in refugee and conflict zones. But we are also seeing this occur more and more often, even in what we call the developed countries and or Western world, with natural disaster response. In fact, I am part of the local Red Cross response disaster response team, and some of you may remember that even earlier this spring, later this spring and early this summer, that we had the flooding from the Ohio River, which displaced people on both sides in Cincinnati and northern Kentucky, and the Red Cross had to set up basically sheltering for people in those areas. So WASH is specifically helpful in these refugee and conflict zones as far as the physical safety and protection for those who have been displaced, by helping to reduce the mortality and morbidity based on diseases, and also by creating the clean access to water, or the safe access to clean water. This helps to support peaceful coexistence and safety by not exacerbating already strained systems and or resources in that area. As I mentioned earlier, that the access to clean water has been recognized as a basic human right. So by providing some of these services, essentially humanitarian efforts are meeting the most basic of human rights. And while we have these people in one area, it is much easier to help to spread education, especially around ideas of gender equality, and education access for like menstruation and women's health issues like that in places that may not have previously had the opportunity and or exposure to this educational offers. So the lack of wash in these communities often leads to absenteeism at school and or work, especially for women who are menstruating or during the times around menstruation. And as I mentioned, the ability to receive education at and around wash facilities about best general hygiene practices helps to raise awareness and contribute to the mitigation and prevention of public health issues scenarios. So that's the prevention and also the curative properties of water and sanitation hygiene programs. Moving on, we are looking at homelessness, specifically in urban context in Cincinnati. And when I say urban context, this starts relatively meta and gets a little bit more specific, moving down specifically to the microcosm of Cincinnati. So here we are. So roughly 828 million people worldwide live in slums or in informal settlements. Obviously, in the United States, we do not officially use the word slum due to its connotation. However, roughly 11% of the residents in the United States live in poverty, which equates to approximately 37 million people. And of the overall population, roughly 24 million people live in quote unquote high poverty neighborhoods, areas where over 40% of the geographic area live under the federal poverty line. So this number has actually quadrupled since 1980, showing the numerical and geographic expansion of communities in poverty and also the access gaps that are created within those communities. Speaking of the American access gap, we're looking at the fact that over 2.2 million Americans currently live without running water or basic plumbing. 44 million people are served water that may be considered unsafe to drink or have high and indecent exposure levels to toxins. This concentration of urban poverty experiences higher levels of overcrowding as well as poor drainage, malfunctioning or lack of sewage systems, and contaminated water sources and or inadequate waste management. In fact, 88% of diarrheal diseases are linked to poor wash access and are disproportionately affecting poor urban populations. It almost goes without saying that these populations are disproportionately Black, Latino, and Indigenous. In the US, a large portion of this contribution for updating the outdated systems and building resilient and inclusive infrastructure and addressing issues was USAID's Urban Wash Program. I think that time has dated this part of the slide well, with the effects that have recently taken place with USAID, as well as other things. So we are still really, really waiting to see what the kind of ripple effect is from kind of the disintegration of USAID's Urban Wash Program, as well as their international programs. Still looking at the United States programming from the urban populations, specifically in urban populations, it is the homeless population who face the most severe levels of wash insecurity, which are further perpetuating cycles of poverty and exclusion. Within unhoused communities, a lack of sanitation often leads to higher outbreaks of hepatitis A and E, shigellosis, and other skin infections. Combined with the fact that the homeless population has a general lack of healthcare access, has really created a breeding ground all over the world and in the US for preventable and treatable health issues, such as the inability of treating chronic wounds, which would be like diabetic ulcers and renal pressure sores, infected injuries, and also exacerbating delayed healing due to malnutrition, direct exposure to the elements, and or lack of hygiene to clean hands and wounds, and the ability to offer dressing changes. So within that context, the need for wash facilities in all urban centers are undeniable. These deficiencies contribute to further personal insecurity, which worsens chronic conditions and mental health instability within the homeless populations. Um, Alongside that, a study in Los Angeles has found that at least 28% of those who lack housing have reported to public and or quote unquote open defecation due to lack of access to basic public restroom facilities. There is, based on this study, no other reason to think that other cities would deviate far from this finding, and which contributes further to the stigma that lies behind homelessness. All of these circumstances can contribute to poor hygiene, can then therefore prevent access to jobs, housing, other public services. So moving on, we are going to look specifically at the Cincinnati situation, what this looks like in our backyard. In 2024, the local news has reported, quote, a record number of people experiencing homelessness and living outdoors in the greater Cincinnati area. This includes reports from the food banks reporting a 30% increase in meals served over the last 2 years. And studies from the Homeless Coalition show that on any given night, there are around 1,000 people who are homeless. And there is an asterisk next to this because obviously these numbers cannot be exact. This is to be taken kind of with a grain of salt when we look at numbers that are released by the city, because obviously it doesn't look good on them to have inflated numbers that would be larger than that. And it's also obviously very, very difficult to figure out who is actually homeless and when, based on the fact that there's not actively somebody going around doing a census of what this is all the time. So within this, approximately 40% of the individuals who are receiving free social assistance report having been unsheltered. So unsheltered homelessness refers to basically free camping. So like living out in a tent in an urban setting, being completely exposed to the elements, which is, being out there with a pillow and a sleeping bag on the sidewalk or on a bench somewhere, living in a homeless encampment, which is relatively popular in large urban areas as well, basically setting up communities of camps, people living out of a vehicle, or other people living in condemned housing and or condemned buildings and other unsafe conditions. So that's 40% of the people who are reporting to be homeless. In 2022, there were at least 6,000 unique individuals who received emergency services from emergency shelters, which were posted due to inclement weather, or from people who had called into safe havens and or to street outreach teams who were directly there to help the unhoused population. This has really been shown in the increase for those who are applying for social service and the uptick of those who are self-reporting as being unhoused at local organizations in Cincinnati. In 2023, Cincinnati had about 170 people experiencing homelessness actively pass away while they were experiencing homelessness, with the average age being around 55 years old, the youngest having been only 3 months old at the time of their passing. Furthermore, those experiencing homelessness in Cincinnati face limited access to clean water and sanitation, and this is exacerbated during winter months. And in 2018, there was an uptick in reports of hepatitis A due to what they called unsanitary conditions and other vector-borne illnesses and infections due to stagnant water and poor waste management around the encampments in Cincinnati. But once again, there is an asterisk around this as well, because it should be mentioned that this may have been part of an anti-homeless publicity campaign, as the legality of unsheltered individuals in Hamilton County was being considered, and was actually being litigated at the exact same time about a week and a half before the litigation ended. So then we're going to go ahead and move on to contributing factors to the rise in homelessness in Cincinnati. Homelessness in Cincinnati is mainly due to a combination of economic pressures, expired pandemic era protections, as well as systemic challenges. Looking at these in order, we see the soaring rent prices and lack of affordable housing. Cincinnati has experienced one of the fastest growing rental markets in the United States. In about 1 year between February of 2024 and 25, the median rents increased by 15.3%, while the national average only rose 0.4%, so less than 1%. So that number is astronomical and unbelievable. And those of you who have spent any time in the west side of Cincinnati, you can see this happening right before our eyes with the expansions around PQL Stadium being the soccer stadium, as well as the redevelopment of the over the Rhine area itself. This is then challenged by the fact that for every 100 low-income households in Ohio, uh, generally there are only about 80 affordable units made available to those people. This is really has something to do with the problem with the zoning laws and the historically restricted, denser, and more affordable housing types being unable to be built due to the slow progress and the changing of the zoning laws, despite the recent reform efforts. Of course, the recent reform efforts moving slow is not a coincidence. There has been quite a backlash to the idea of affordable housing and also the creation of housing for those who are unhoused because of concern around property values. So that is kind of the chicken and the egg argument there. So secondly, we're looking at the expiration of the COVID era aid and eviction protections. Since federal support like the eviction moratoria and the emergency rental assistance expired, which really helped prevent mass displacement during the pandemic, we've seen homelessness increase significantly. This is not only pertinent or central or unique to Cincinnati. We have seen this happen all over the United States. So the fact that it's happening here is really no surprise. However, in Hamilton County, we saw specifically the fact that emergency rental aid was almost completely dropped compared to the height of the ARPA funding, which had left many at risk of eviction. That, of course, is then goes hand in hand with the fact that we were facing inflation at the time. So between those three fundamental aspects, we have really seen an uptick in people being moved out of their housing, which has led to our third point, which is the shelter overcapacity and increased family homelessness. The number of homeless families in Cincinnati has absolutely surged. In 2024, over 2,200 families and or households. Families is a relative term. I prefer to use the term household. So 2,200 families sought shelter, yet there was only accommodation for 226 of those families. A large part of this has been due to the fact that the average stays increased from 45 to 60 days. Of course, because of the fact that there was lack of affordable housing available, people are staying then in temporary shelters longer, which means that the people that are trying to get into the temporary shelters can no longer get in. Today, this also has a direct effect on children. In fact, Cincinnati public schools are currently estimating that there are over 3,000 children who are currently unhoused. And as they have self-reported that, obviously you can see why there would be a direct conflict around the number that was given earlier, where they reported that at any night up to 1,000 people could be considered unhoused, when we currently have CPS reporting that there are 3,000 children currently unhoused within their school systems. So we also are looking at regional displacement and from regional laws. So new laws in neighboring state in Kentucky, called the quote unquote Safer Kentucky Act, has criminalized public sleeping and public camping. And especially in northern Kentucky and some of the larger areas, this has driven people directly who were unhoused previously living in northern Kentucky to come into Cincinnati. This legislation was also unsurprisingly recently upheld by the Supreme Court, which allows individual cities to ban people from sleeping in public places, essentially at their discretion. So many of those people who had previously been had access to maybe temporary shelters and or just overnight shelters to be able to come and go. If there was insecurity around that, they have now left northern Kentucky and moved into southern Ohio, Hamilton County, and been staying in unsheltered areas under bridges or encampments. Obviously, there's no access to sanitation or clean water there. Due to the risk of being fined and or incarcerated, ironically, than having a place to stay for the night in northern Kentucky, which means that they come spend the night in Cincinnati, then often regress back to northern Kentucky during the day. Then finally, we look at the structural factors and service gap. So lack of access to addiction and mental health services also plays a role here, something that the Ohio and this area is not unfamiliar with over the last 25 years. Whether this be from those trying to get into rehab, coming out of rehabilitation centers, trying to find sober living residences, or individuals who are returning and attempting to reintegrate from the judicial system. The underfunded diversion programs, limited long-term rental assistance, and resistance to building permanent supportive housing, such as like tiny home villages, which I had kind of touched around earlier, has also contributed to the problem. So these failures perpetuate cycles of poverty and of exclusion. And as I mentioned briefly before, this doesn't even begin to look at the underlying issues of systemic racism, whose current basically, emphasizes almost every single aspect of the all previously mentioned factors. So we are going to move along to the Mary Magdalen House. So what is and who is the Mary Magdalen House? So we are centered in the heart of Over the Rhine. The Mary Magdalen House is a shower house and laundry house, and we have been serving our guests in the community since 1988, having started as a grassroots private not-for-profit organization. Basically, neighbors and parishioners in the area in the mid 80s recognized the need for a bathing house for those experiencing homelessness and having a lack of clean water in the area. A couple years later, 1988, the doors opened on Main Street in downtown Over the Rhine, with our legacy continuing for almost 40 years after the fact. Over the Rhine's disproportionate population of people affected by homelessness and extreme poverty enabled the Mary Magdalen House mission to become a staple in our community, and we are actively working alongside other resources such as Our Daily Bread, the Center for Respite Care, so those who are unhoused leaving the hospital, the St. Anthony Center, which is a food kitchen and also does foot care for the soul, and the Free Store Food Bank, as well as the Welcome Home Committee, which is for those coming out of the judicial systems. With around a dozen paid employees, many of them who have experienced homelessness themselves, our efforts are heavily supported by both volunteers and local and private donors. Essentially, the Mary Magdalen House started off with a handful of showers, 2 washers, and 2 dryers. And out of necessity for space and project expansion, we have relocated to Republic Street, which is essentially what you think of as like the areas of central homelessness in any major city. Today, we offer seven male showers. We have 4 female showers. We have a total of 5 toilets, multiple urinals. We have 7 sinks just for washing hands, taking bird baths. We offer a 1 outfit per guest per day laundry service. We have Monday through Friday haircuts provided by an external organization. We have the opportunity for guests to receive their mail. We offer long-term storage for some of our guests. We have move-in care packages, so like hygiene services for our guests who had recently been housed but may not have the ability to pay for things like shampoo, soap, conditioner, all of these other basic hygiene items that come with moving into your own place and having to put together your bathroom kits. We also have bus passes because transportation with every project is an issue. And we also offer a plethora of other resources, which include access to basic street medical care, the ability to sign up for government assistance within our building, HIV and hepatitis testing, and other harm reduction supplies such as wound care kits, condoms, fentanyl strip tests, and more. Furthermore, we do have an in-house resource navigator who directs our guests to any other external needs they may encounter, whether that be sheltering and housing, options for women and children, specifically for shelter and housing, LGBTQ plus services, and other organizations such as that provide safe spaces for domestic violence, victims of sexual violence, and human trafficking survivors. We serve approximately in 2024, we served approximately 1,900 unique individuals, and we were able to offer almost 25,000 showers last year. This includes running over 3,000 loads of laundry for our guests to have clean clothes on a daily basis. Uh, on that daily basis, we serve approximately 100 individuals. We have over 300 mailboxes, and we offer one of the only collection points for mail and for street addresses for people to be able to list a street address when they're applying for their identification cards, which then allows them to receive those identification cards in the mail, to receive food stamps, social security checks, personal correspondence, care packages sent by loved ones, and yes, even the ever inescapable spam mail and bills still show up to the Mary Magdalen House. This year alone, the Mary Magdalen House has given out more articles of clothing already than any other full calendar year in our almost 40-year history. This may be in part due to the uptick of general homelessness, local policies, federal funding cuts, or as some of you may know, the fire that occurred under the Big Mac Bridge last year, where there had previously been a homelessness encampment. And just kind of as a follow up for that, if you are familiar with this event, the four individuals that were arrested for the arson were not had not and were not experiencing homelessness. But obviously, their actions not only led to the dispersion of the people under that bridge, but it also, sparked the public debate around homelessness, and the misleading information that was spread reignited, the stereotypes and policy discussions around homelessness, specifically in Hamilton County and other cities in Southern Ohio. And it is precisely that stigma that is attached to homelessness that Mary Magdalen House has been actively trying to combat for almost 40 years. Through our own direct efforts and the external organizations that work hand in hand with us, we are attempting to reinforce the inherent dignity and worth of every guest who walks through our doors, whether that be to get a drink of water from the water fountain, to be able to use the bathroom in private, to be able to wash their hands, take a hot shower, and put on a clean pair of underwear. It's these basic activities that almost every single one of us here in this room right now take for granted. That's what makes us one of the very first stops on hundreds of people's mornings, for those who are facing what is easily probably the most difficult time of their lives. So the question is, with having that said, where do we go from here? As we can see, that the water and sanitation and hygiene is not strictly about the creation of infrastructure, but it's also rather an issue of public health concern and a recognition of basic human rights, and not only for the homeless, even though I am here on that front. Both the United Nations, UNICEF, and the International Federation of the Red Cross recommend hygiene stations and mobile wash stations to help combat lack of access to those. And they also emphasize that the creation of these programs can help in emergency preparedness and response, and can also double as service stations for resource coordination. Such stations can directly help to increase public access to shelters, employment, social service, and a decrease in discrimination towards the unhoused population within the public sphere. All of these efforts help to restore dignity, enabling opportunity and better chances at long-term stability and reintegration back into the general population. Unlike the efforts put forth, however, by the United Nations, the United States, as we referred to earlier with the disintegration of U.S. aid, and previous to that, we have lacked kind of a unified coalition, which would lead to the decrease in these large service gaps and inefficiencies. And this lack of continuity has created a need for community-centered based models that engage local stakeholders, especially those in marginalized urban areas. And it has shown that such local programs that are actively refining their strategies and improving access help to create long-term positive impacts for those who are affected. It is precisely for this reason that the Mary Magdalen House, as a trusted member of the community, is now in the process of a project expansion, which is why I'm here, essentially. As we prepare to take our expertise on the road, we are already in a quiet launch period, and we're in talk with local partners and stakeholders as we are embarking on a new adventure, which will allow us to access those who are not in our immediate area, being in over the Rhine. Having already produced a community assessment, we have highlighted individual populations both inside and outside of the city and in remote areas who lack access to these, previously stated services: the shower, toilet, hygiene kits, clean clothes. And it is for this reason that we are starting to showcase our talents to others who share a similar moral compass. Excuse me. We are currently creating an outreach project for creating ambassadorships for those who wish to join us on a multitude of levels, whether that be ranging from volunteering with us to advocacy within the communities and within your own networks, to in-kind and monetary donation raising. At the end of the day, we're essentially just here looking to deepen bonds with those that we are wishing to interact with within this humanitarian sphere, and those who are trying to help us empower our program. That being said, we're all essentially, I think, the humanitarian organizations, as well as those with religious and theist affiliation, are essentially just trying to do the best we can and trying to empower those who are often pushed geographically and societally to the fringes. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and flip over here to our leading discussion questions, and we can take the last 15 to 20 minutes basically to open up a Q&A about any, topics, concerns, points that anyone might want to discuss. And with that, I will turn it back to our mediator.
Thanks so much, Brian. We do have one question that's already come through in the chat, asking whether the Mary Magdalen House experiences any resistance from community members who might view the center as a magnet for congregation, drug use, etc. How does the Mary Magdalen House manage community relations and combat stigma among people in the greater neighborhood who might have negative views of the unhoused and the organizations that help them?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There's a lot going on there, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm opening the chat myself so I can make sure I try to address every part of that. Okay, so the over the Rhine area is an interesting case study, I would say, for this. And I'm sure that it's similar to this and all around in large urban populations where the unhoused population has basically been pushed from the fringes of being the downtown area, where many may have previously congregated. So a lot of the people in the area have grown up around violence and drug use, and also the unhoused population. As I mentioned, the over the Rhine area itself is disproportionately affected by extreme poverty. And so what happens is they've essentially tried to limit the unhoused population to about 2 square blocks. So everyone's basically been pushed over into that area. All of the previously mentioned organizations are also within 2 blocks of each other. And so it's unfortunately become one of these don't ask, don't tell things. The police I say very rarely come through there just trying to, pat people down for drugs, drug use, prostitution, stuff like that, because they know that they've essentially pushed them into this corner anyhow. And, for lack of a better term, it would be like shooting fish in a barrel. If you were trying to patrol that area. That does, however, create kind of an odd relation with those who are not involved in that area in those activities. And it can be quite difficult for the people who live in that area. Many people have gone ahead and up and left the area. And then, so how does MMH manage community relations and combat stigma among people in the greater neighborhood who might have negative views of the unhoused and the organizations that help them? I don't think that our neighborhood specifically has the problem with the stigma, because I said that those living in extreme poverty and that have been exposed to it recognize and have family members who are within that population, which really takes the stigma away, is if you know somebody personally and you see them on a day-to-day basis. However, we have gotten a huge backlash when we were trying to find another brick and mortar area to possibly, when we were doing our community needs assessment, on the east side of the city where people did not want us to be building a location that would draw homelessness or those experiencing homelessness into that area. And so one of the ways that we try to destigmatize that is by the access and resource connection navigation, which is, we give people showers and clean clothes so that they're presentable, so that they're, when you see somebody who is unhoused on the street, that the idea or the mental personification of what we think that looks like is not who's actually being presented. It's somebody who feels good about themselves. They have a smile on their face. They have a nice pair of jeans on. They've got, fresh underwear and socks and, a clean outfit. And I think that really goes a long way, especially for those who are actively trying to find jobs too, because tons of our people will come in, take a shower, they go to the library, fill out applications, and many people are living in the area, are actively seeking employment. And so just meeting these basic necessities, like being able to take a shower before you go into a job interview, is huge, 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 huge. Not only for the societal perspective, but also for the emotional and psychological well-being of the individuals of our guests. I hope that kind of addresses some of those.
Thanks, Brian. I believe Francois has a question. Did you want to unmute yourself, Francois?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. I was not able to type my question. I want to thank the Interfaith Center for this discussion. Actually, I really find myself in a place where things are really going the way it should really be. So trying to act finding dignity for all, which you've really described and sounds very interesting. I was asking if if you train others, if you train organizations in your model, if you have the um SEPA, if you have the opportunity to train organizations to follow the model you are carrying out in giving this dignity to people, and also borders you exercise your activities. Thank you, the geographical borders. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Francois. Um, so we typically have not. Unfortunately, it has really been the kind of the mission operative of the organization to kind of stay extremely local. So, but as I mentioned, we have inadvertently found ourselves to be the experts in this model within the community, and have recently been approached by the University of Cincinnati as well to start taking on some of the opportunities that they present to us as far as going into the community. And so one of the reasons that I was brought in, as well as some of the new team members, was to kind of give this makeover to the organization, because we realize that we have such a strong name within our community that is really disadvantageous for us to not use that as far as to go out into the community to offer trainings, to be kind of the prototype for offering these programs. But as I said, one of the reasons that we are starting this new project is we are going to be starting a mobile shower truck and laundry truck to go out into the communities, so that we have the media visibility. And so we have the expertise, we have the ability to start speaking at these platforms. We were at the Festival of Faiths this year. And so one of our big campaigns right now is not only just our program and our project, but also marketing and awareness raising. So we're really, really trying to start pushing the brand authority kind of Mary Magdalen House and our tie to the community. And that affiliation, which really does give us the credibility and respect to start going into some of these other places and show them what our facilities are like, and how they're run, and how to stay away from sort of pitfalls that somebody may get into if they were to try to start their own. But we are relatively unique in the fact that we are strictly a shower and laundry house in the area.
Thanks, Brian. Another question.
Thank you. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Francois. Another question has come through in the chat. Does the city of Cincinnati help the Mary Magdalen House with any funding besides donations from the community members? What are your other sources of funding? And Becca also said she applauds your organization for the incredibly humane and important work you are doing.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. So we do not receive funding from the city of Cincinnati. And I want to touch on this because I think that this is actually an important aspect, because there's reasoning for this, not only when we do grant applications for the grant reporting, but one of the things that kind of strays from us and some of the other local organizations from receiving funding from the city of Cincinnati is basically the client or guest reporting that is required to go along with that. So we don't require a state ID for somebody to use our services. In fact, we don't even require a picture ID for somebody to gain access to our property, because we feel that it's really restricting. A lot of the people that come to us don't have IDs. They don't have proof of who they are. Many of them may have mental health issues. And so the reporting that comes along with the identification of who our guests are has discouraged us from kind of going in that direction as far as receiving certain grants, whether it be from the federal government, from the state government, or from the city of Cincinnati. So we were essentially, when we were founded in the 80s, it was essentially by a local family, and also the St. Mary's Church downtown. Now that family has continued to help with a lot of the funding for this, basically as their service project. But one of the things that we're doing right now is we are really diversifying our funding. We are looking at the moral upstanding of stakeholders who we would approach. We are extremely picky about who we take money from, because of the fact that there have been a lot of the reason that many of these people are homeless are because of some of the large corporations in the area. And for us, it would be a conflict of interest to be receiving money from the same people who have caused some of the homelessness, or who are not necessarily ecologically or socioeconomically friendly towards our community. So we do quite a tedious process as far as receiving non-anonymous donations and things like this. So we're looking at local organizations like the Rotary Club. We're looking at talking to other local business members, people who have grown up and established themselves as key stakeholders in the West Side community. And kind of the advantage of being a private organization and having some of the funding that we have has allowed us kind of to be choosy about who we receive funding from. But as we start the project expansion, of course, we're also looking to partner with other people to create a volunteer network of not just people that were retired from the previous church community, but we're also going into the interfaith centers, talking to synagogues, to mosques, going to the Festival of Faith, talking to the Sikhs, anybody and everybody who wants to help, because homelessness sees no color, class, race, or creed, So that's really one of the reasons that we're getting away from the old branding of what Mary Magdalen House was and doing this transition right now into the community. So thank you again for that question. Back to Var.
There's one more question in the chat now. Does the Mary Magdalen House serve any guests with tenuous immigration status? Are there intersections between immigration and homelessness in the Cincinnati area? And if so, how do you reach immigrant, unhoused, or housing precarious groups?
Thank you again for the wonderful question. The answer to that question, the first question is yes. We do serve guests with the tenuous immigration status. And that's really none of our business. As I said before, we don't ask for legalities behind this. We're also a second chance employer. We have set ourselves up in that we do not allow public officials, whether it be from the police or specifically now from ICE, to enter our property. They are not allowed to serve warrants at our property because of the fact that our address is the home address of literally thousands of people, that they don't have the jurisdiction to kind of come onto our private property there. And yeah, so large parts of the immigrant population that have become homeless due to their inability to have the legal status to apply for social services, they come here. Also, just the fact that when you have large communities of migrants in one area, that also becomes part of their comfort zone. So it's been interesting as you sit there. We have French speaking Africans come in there. There's Somalians, there's Ethiopians. We have people coming from Central and South America constantly, from the Caribbean, whether it be from Haiti or Jamaica. We are a melting pot, and that's how we like it. That is something that we are unapologetic about. The only place where we really draw the line is that we don't allow minors in because of the fact that it is a shower house. But with the fact that we don't take identifications, we're basically saying if somebody presents themselves as being over 18, then they're allowed in. But if someone says, well, can I bring my son or daughter in with me? The answer to that is going to be no, because it's an adults only facility. And that's one of the things that we're looking at as we go forward with the mobile, because of the fact that those pods are going to be are private, or not that they're not private at the brick and mortar store, but that is something that we're looking at as far as the project expansion too, as how to integrate the large number of full families who have become unhoused recently.
Thank you so much, Brian. I know we are approaching the hour now. I just want to open it up if there are any final questions or comments. And you're also welcome to ask your question directly, come off mute.
I think we're good. I thought I would get everybody out here early, so I'm going to try to stick to my word and so you guys can get out of here 3 minutes early. But I just want to take the time again to thank the Interfaith Center for allowing us to have this platform to kind of start talking about our message and where we're heading. And thank you for everyone who took the time to join us today. There's no point of having a conversation if there's nobody to listen. So it takes two to tango. So I appreciate everybody for joining us.
Thank you so much. And we will send out the recording of today's program to everyone who registered. And Brian, if you have any resources, links, anything that you think would be helpful, I will send those out in the follow-up email as well. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you all.
Everyone.